Hey everyone, welcome to Daily Revelations. We are continuing on this series of Worship Is, and today I'm going to talk about two Greek words which are very similar and they have the same root word, and so, but they're both translated into worship, which is what we're going through. Is all the words that we translate into worship in the English version of the Bible, they don't always mean the same thing. And when we look at them as a whole, we get a better understanding of what God says worship is through His Word. So that's what we're doing. So thanks for joining me again today. So the two words that I focused on over the weekend were the Greek words of proskakinio and proskakinetias. And they mean to prostrate oneself, to bow down, to fall down, as sometimes it's used. And the second one means a true worshiper. But what does that look like in context? That is what gives us truly an understanding of what God says this word means, not just its definition. We can look at a definition and only get so much sense of the word, but we need to also apply it to ourselves. And that's what's most important about when we study the Bible. It's just not about what we stuff up here. It's what we get to hear, and what we get in our hearts, is what overflows into our actions and to what we do every day. And we want this to change. So it's got to come from here down to here. And so I have some highlights because there was like 60 some references to this word, and a lot of them basically said the same thing. So I'm just going to highlight the main themes. There were three in Matthew that I really wanted to start on, because in Matthew 9:18, a synagogue official comes and bows down before Jesus, and he says, "I need you to heal my daughter." Then in Matthew 15:25, a woman is crying out, and she bows down before Jesus, and she says, I need you to heal my demon-possessed daughter. And then in Matthew 18:26, there's a slave. This is now in one of the parables that Jesus was talking about, but he was talking about this slave who was coming and asking for the Lord that he owed a lot of debts to just give him time, to be patient with him, and how the Lord granted his request. Because, as Jesus said, God desires to do the same thing, to allow us the time to change and allow us to bow down and come to Him and plead with Him that things do change. Because when we do that, when we prostrate ourselves, when we put ourselves to the point where we are flat on our face before somebody, it changes our heart. And that is the point that this word is getting at, as we see it in these three instances. It's a begging of change. Something is not right, and we know it isn't, and there's nothing within us that can cause that change. And so what do? We go to the one who can change it, and we say, I will worship you. I will bow down. I will give over all of myself, because I know that is the only way to come to terms with what needs to be done and what needs to be righted, what's wrong. So there's the first take on that. Next, in Matthew 28, this is the end of the story of Matthew, and I love this picture. Jesus just rose from the dead. The women are at the tomb, and Mary gets down on her knees and grabs Jesus' feet and says, "Do not leave me." Is that the way we worship God? Do not leave me. I need you. Or do we say, yeah, it's nice you're here. There's a difference. When we worship, we cling to God because He is our hope. He is our salvation. So, sorry. I get emotional sometimes. Haven't recently. This is good. So Next, we're moving on to the book of John. John uses this word in an interesting way in two different instances. In John 4, it's when Jesus is talking with the woman at the Samaritan woman at the well. And she is saying, well, when your people, they worship here, and our people, we worship here. And this is the word that is used when it's talking about worshiping. And she worshiped what she knew. It wasn't that Jesus was condemning her because she knew no better. But he said, soon you will worship in spirit and truth. And we're going to come back to that at the end because, just because. I'll leave you hanging on that one. But in John 9:36, the blind man is healed by Jesus. And he's questioned by the Pharisees and all of this. And it's a long drawn out read. Go to John 9 to read the whole story. But what happens is, through the process, this man truly realizes that Jesus is Christ. And he comes and he bows down and worships him. It takes a little while for it to go from his head to his heart, but not very long. And once he does, he makes that change instantly. So here we have the contrast of the Samaritan woman who worships out of duty, worships because it's a religion she's grown up in. How often do we see that? Not knowing why we worship. And yet, here's this blind man who also was in the temple, was doing the right things, and encountered God. And in his encounter of God, his worship changed to true worship in spirit and truth. Now, you say, well, what about all those lost people that don't worship in truth, that go to church and just say, I'm worshiping? This is where the true worshipers need to stand out, because in 1 Corinthians 14:25 it says that that in our assemblance and how we conduct ourselves in our own worship, God's Spirit will use that to convict and cause those who don't know him to bow down and worship him. It's nothing we say or we do. It's an outpouring of the trajectory we have chosen that will convince people that their trajectory is not the right one. And so often, I remember even my own story. When I encountered real believers, I went, that's what I want. I will pursue that because I want that in my life. I don't like the way my worship and my life is going right now. I desire what they have. And that's what being salt and light is truly about. And our worship puts that on the trajectory to do that all day long as we worship God. And so, just want to wrap up with this. So Revelation is filled with this word. But in the end, at the end of Revelations, in Revelations 22, it sums up that the worship that we do here on the right trajectory is what determines how we worship in the end. Will we worship God as a believer and as the bride of Christ, or will we worship from afar, which it says that all, even that worship Satan and worshipped the beast, were made to bow down before the bride of Christ and worship God and his bride. We will all worship. We will all worship God. But will we be thrown into the lake where there's eternal damnation, or will we worship in joy and at God's side? That's our choice. It's a heavy one. We have a choice every day. What is our trajectory? How will I worship? And how will I take that worship into whatever I do today and my tomorrow? So thanks for joining me on Daily Revelations. And I will see you again tomorrow or whatever day I have my next word study completed. And I will be sharing with you what I find out and whatever God reveals to me in my daily revelation. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.